The only Linkin Park news I have for you is that, we talk like every few weeks. Like I talk to the guys or some of the guys, and there's no tours, there's no music, there's no albums in the pipeline. Just keep in your minds that is not happening.
In a time when millennial nostalgia for music from the 90s and 2000s appears to be at an all-time high, it seems like every band is trying to cash in by announcing comeback tours and albums. I mean, Live Nation literally created a festival dedicated to giving people what they want back in 2022 with the When We Were Young Fest, which quickly turned from a single-day event to an annual festival going on its 5th year in 2025. And when you think about legendary bands from the 2000s that are no longer together, I'd be surprised if Linkin Park isn't near the top of most people's lists. Despite being part of one of the cringiest genres at the time, nu metal, the band managed to reach a level of mainstream success that almost feels unfathomable, with the second best-selling debut album of the 21st century and 12 albums peaking in the Billboard Top 10. At the time of researching for this video, Linkin Park was still the 25th most streamed artist in the world. Beyond commercial success, the band has some of the most dedicated fans, and the loss of the beloved Chester Bennington seemed like it was felt by the entire world.
A Thousand Lights is basically a massive tribute to Chester Bennington and Linkin Park, with 1,000 musicians all coming together to play on the arena floor of the Utility Arena where Chester Bennington played his last ever show.
Chester truly had a one-of-a-kind talent and was easily one of the greatest singers of his generation. Following Chester's passing, the BBC described him as having the voice of a generation, and fellow nu metal frontman Fred Durst wrote, "He had a way of making anyone he spoke to feel heard, understood, and significant. His aura and spirit were contagious and empowering. Often, those types of people have so much pain and torture inside that the last thing they want is to contaminate or break the spirit of others." With that, Emily Armstrong, Linkin Park's new singer, has some nearly impossible shoes to fill.
When I started to hear Emily's voice on things, it was like the first time that my brain would accept it as a Linkin Park song.
I mean, this could work.
And then all of a sudden we're here and it's very real and it's really big.
It's pretty rare for artists to have successful comebacks that don't appear desperate, and it's even harder to change the lead singer of the band. Despite this, From Zero, Linkin Park's first album to not feature Chester on vocals, debuted at #1 in 10 different countries and has surpassed 1 billion streams on Spotify alone. So how exactly was Linkin Park able to overcome these obstacles? Well, that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. Linkin Park was formed back in 1996 by high school friends Mike Shinoda, Rob Borden, and Brad Delson. The trio eventually recruited Joe Hahn, Dave Farrell, and original singer Mark Wakefield to fill out the band, which at the time went by the name Zero. Mark eventually left the band due to the lack of the band's success, and Chester Bennington auditioned for the band in 1999 and would shortly after join as the permanent vocalist, with the band eventually rebranding under the name Linkin Park. While Rob and Chester wouldn't rejoin the band in 2024 for their reunion, Linkin Park's lineup has remained incredibly consistent. Between 2002 and 2017, Linkin Park released 7 studio albums and 2 remix albums, all of which saw pretty massive levels of commercial success. In 2017, Chester Bennington tragically took his own life following the recent passing of his very close friend Chris Cornell, and the band went on a permanent hiatus.
The outpouring of support after the tragic death of Linkin Park's lead singer Chester Bennington, the Grammy Award-winning father of 6, believed to have taken his life at his home in California.
During this time, Mike Shinoda continued producing for other bands and releasing his own music, including his solo EP Post Traumatic the following year, with themes largely centered around the loss of his close friend and bandmate. It may not be well known by the average Linkin Park fan, but Shinoda wasn't just one of the founding members, but is critical in shaping the band's sound overall. Mike has production credits on nearly all of Linkin Park's albums, songwriting credits on most of their catalog. He played a large role in the art direction and branding for the band, and heavily influenced the creative direction of the band overall. If anyone can see the band into the future without Chester, it's Mike. When asked on Twitter about the future of Linkin Park in 2018, Shinoda responded with, "I have every intention on continuing with Linkin Park, and the guys feel the same. We have a lot of rebuilding to do and questions to answer, so it'll take time." After this, we definitely got mixed messages from the band over time. In a 2021 interview with Rock Antenna, Mike had this to say.
Would you ever consider looking for a new singer for the band?
I mean, that's not my goal. Right now, I think it has to happen naturally, and if we find somebody that is like a great person and that we think is a good personality fit and a good stylistic fit, then I could see trying to do some stuff with somebody.
In 2022, Mike makes it clear that the band has no plans for new music or a tour. It turns out the following year that Linkin Park was working behind the scenes with new singer Emily Armstrong. In fact, Emily came out to Mike Shinoda's studio back in 2019 for the first time for a few days to work on some songs together.
This is what you asked for!
Linkin Park actually had the #1 rock song on rock radio in 2023 with Lost, an unreleased song from 2003's Meteora. It's a badass song, but it was literally recorded in 2002. Even in 2023, the people spoke and they chose Linkin Park. And look, rock music is in a rough place right now. Rock isn't cool anymore. Look at the 2025 Grammys. The Beatles won Best Rock Performance for the song Now and Then.
Winner of Best Rock Performance is, I've heard of these guys, the Beatles,
which was created with the help of AI, and the Rolling Stones won Best Rock Album. These are legendary bands, but they were formed over 60 fucking years ago. This isn't to say that the genre as a whole isn't popular, there just aren't any big bands carrying the genre like there were back in the radio era. Honestly, if rock were more popular right now, I'm not sure if Linkin Park's comeback would have been so successful. Beyond Chester's pure talent are Linkin Park's lyrics, which are relatable while having depth, dealing with things like disappointment, anger, and personal struggle. Linkin Park really are masters at capturing emotion. Take the reflection in the chorus of In the End. The heartbreaking One More Light. Or the angst of One Step Closer. Linkin Park writes songs that almost anyone can relate to and that cover the range of the human experience. The band also maintained a very clean image. It's almost shocking that a band of this style did not swear on their first 2 albums and stayed out of essentially all controversy. Rob and Brad don't even have tattoos, and Mike claims to have never done hard drugs. This was a stark contrast to peers in other bands like Limp Bizkit. While Chester struggled with addiction throughout his time in the band, he generally was trying to do better, and I think fans could sense this. Oh, and did I mention that the band is just really freaking talented? They went from pure nu metal to alternative and even to pop with One More Light. The band put artistry ahead of record sales, which is honestly really uncommon for a band of their size. But that was the old Linkin Park with Chester nearly 7 years ago. And if we're being honest, 2024 may not have been the best year for comebacks. We had Justin Timberlake come back with his follow-up to 2018's Man on the Moon. The album was the 3rd worst reviewed album of the year on Metacritic. Justin also pled guilty to a DUI he received not too long after the album released and the start of the Forget Tomorrow World Tour. While the tour is a commercial success, JT's reputation definitely took some hits in 2024. Katy Perry also made a comeback, announcing her first tour since 2018 and releasing the album 143, which is universally determined to be her worst work to date and received the top spot on the worst Metacritic albums of 2024. On top of this, her Woman's World music video has been memed into oblivion, and she was under investigation for possible environmental damages for her Lifetime's video shoot. Let's just say it wasn't a good year to be a Katy Perry fan. And you can't forget the iconic Jane's Addiction reuniting with their original lineup, releasing an album, and subsequently canceling the second half of their comeback tour following Perry Farrell throwing a punch at Dave Navarro mid-show. All in all, comebacks are rough, and 2024 was here to prove it. Changing lead singers is one of the most difficult things that a band can do. In fact, I think that the majority of people would argue that a band can't change its lead singer without also changing its name. Still, there are a few examples of bands very successfully making the switch, and of course, many more unsuccessful ones. So who is the gold star example of a lead singer change gone right? Yep, it's AC/DC. Following Bon Scott's death in 1979, Brian Johnson joined the band the following year. 1979 was the release of Highway to Hell, which is largely regarded as one of the band's best albums, and was followed up with Back in Black the following year, with Johnson behind the microphone. Back in Black is considered one of the best hard rock albums of all time. Or how about Iron Maiden, who fired their original singer Paul Di'Anno after their first two albums? During this time, the band was still opening for bands like Kiss and Judas Priest, receiving heavy rotation on MTV, and even charting on the Billboard 200. Despite this, their third album with singer Bruce Dickinson, The Number of the Beast, went on to even larger success and commercial acclaim, and the band only became more popular with time. So many more bands have not been so successful. Remember Blink-182 without Tom DeLonge and with Matt Skiba in his place? I saw them live during this time, and I'll just say it wasn't great. Or how about Sublime with Rome? Sadly, Bradley was too big of a part of Sublime to replace, and the band only ended up adding the "with Rome" to the band name after a lawsuit. So why exactly does Emily work in Linkin Park with such huge shoes to fill?
Chester was one of a kind. He's only Chester. And Emily's also one of a kind. She's only Emily. Like when I hear her sing, she doesn't sound like him to me. She sounds like her. And that's what I like. Like what I like about her voice is that it's very unique and it sounds, I don't know how else to explain it. Like when she sings on the songs, they sound like Linkin Park songs.
Emily Armstrong co-founded the band Dead Sarah, who played their first show way back in 2005. The band generally fits in the alternative rock and hard rock genres, sharing similarities to bands like The Pretty Reckless. Based on Dead Sarah's music alone, she's not an obvious pick for Linkin Park's next singer. The band had some commercial success with their debut and sophomore records, performing on shows like Jimmy Kimmel, but they were never really able to break through into the mainstream, and so Emily's talents were unknown to most of Linkin Park's fandom. We weren't getting Linkin Park with Emily, we were just getting Linkin Park. No one knows who Emily is, which I think was generally a good thing. Still, Emily's not a newbie, she's a seasoned vocalist and a badass one at that. We talked about examples of bands in the previous section who were able to successfully replace their lead singer, but one thing that we don't see often is a female singer replace a male one. This immediately puts a degree of separation between the two vocalists and is a pretty genius move in my opinion. It's a lot harder for me to compare the more feminine and younger Emily to Chester than say Ollie from Bring Me the Horizon or Noah from Bad Omens. Female leads are also having a big moment in modern rock and nu metal. We had Spiritbox's song Cellar Door and Poppy and Knock Loose's song Suffocate both being nominated for Best Metal Performance at the 2025 Grammys. Suffocate also hit number 10 on Spotify's Viral Top 50, and Spiritbox's debut album Eternal Blue peaked at number 1 on the US Top Rock and Hard Rock album charts. Emily's also not the sole vocalist in Linkin Park. She shares vocal duties with Mike Shinoda. This is actually a pretty big factor on how the band can still sound like Linkin Park without Chester. One of the bands that inspired me when I was growing up was Taking Back Sunday, who's largely a dual vocalist band. While Adam Lazzara has maintained the lead singer role, the backup singer changed on 3 of their first 4 albums. But the band did not slow down for a second, largely because of the recognition of Adam's voice throughout. While Emily's new to Linkin Park, From Zero, and the new iteration of the band feels a lot like a return to form of the Linkin Park that the world initially fell in love with. On top of this, somehow, nu metal actually reached a new peak of popularity in 2023, its highest level in 20 years, so really the timing couldn't be better. And for diehard Linkin Park fans that stuck with them throughout their career, well, they're used to change. While Hybrid Theory and Meteora feature very similar sounds, later records strayed away from the traditional nu metal elements of their early work. Minutes to Midnight featured much more straightforward rock tracks with heavy punk influences. The more polarizing 1,000 Suns leaned much more into heavy electronic and industrial rock elements. Living Things was a pure electronic rock record, bringing back in some familiar sounds. Hunting Party delivers a more straightforward metal album that is mostly a return to form while ditching some of the cliche nu metal elements. And finally, One More Light is really just a straight up pop rock record. From Zero sounds a lot like Hybrid Theory and Meteora with a new singer. The record, in a very smart way, slowly introduces you to Emily. The lead single from the record, The Emptiness Machine, actually doesn't feature Emily's vocals until 1 minute and 7 seconds into the song. The single, which is also the first true song in the album, starts off with the familiar sound of Mike's voice. In the end, see what I did there? Emily's voice seems like the focus of the album in a lot of ways. Like Linkin Park was showcasing her talent to the world as a way of saying that Emily is a part of the band. We hear banter between Emily and the band throughout, which further drives home this idea. The album is also very short at just under 32 minutes, a perfect length, in my opinion, to introduce the new Linkin Park to the world. Despite everything, you still have those fans that believe that Linkin Park is not Linkin Park without Chester Bennington, and I think this is completely fair. If you go back and you read old threads of people discussing the topic, you'll see a lot of the same. Linkin Park isn't complete without Chester, in my opinion. Linkin Park is probably done, but not completely. Bands should keep moving forward without that smiling beast, which is Chester, or those that just want Mike to take the helm. And the band was almost immediately hit with controversy around Emily after it was discovered that Emily had potential ties to the Church of Scientology and attended a hearing for Danny Masterson before he was sentenced. Emily has never spoken on her ties with the church, but has since denounced Danny Masterson, and while there was some initial backlash, it does feel like fans have largely embraced Emily. And the performance of the record really shows. Reviews for the album were generally positive. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. The band managed to occupy the entire top 10 of the Hot Hard Rock Songs chart at the same time for the first time in history, and the album debuted at number 1 in 10 different countries. Despite what any one person says, the fans have spoke and they like the record. Two-Faced feels like it could be on Hybrid Theory right next to One Step Closer. And Heavy as the Crown is a nu metal banger that shows the band still has it and that Emily is a competent singer that can hold her own in one of the most beloved bands of the 2000s. Zine to Screen is a new channel and your support means so much to me. If you like the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more content like this. I'll see you all soon for the next one. Peace.